First Contact's bitter truth. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the holographic display in the United Earth Defense Command Center, her hand steady despite the weight of the moment. The massive alien vessel hanging in orbit above Earth filled the projection, its crystalline structure refracting sunlight in ways that defied conventional physics. After 3 days of tense communications, the Galactic Council's representatives had finally agreed to a face-to-face meeting. "They're dismissing our entire civilization based on energy signatures," she muttered, analyzing the latest scan data from the alien ship. The readings suggested technology operating on principles that made Earth's most advanced quantum computers look like abacuses. Admiral James Rodriguez approached, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of the hologram. "The Council's preliminary assessment classified us as a Class 3 civilization, Dr. Chen. Barely above primitive spacefaring status." Sarah's jaw tightened. 6 years of leading humanity's dimensional physics research program, and these aliens had relegated her life's work to the category of quaint historical attempts at understanding reality. The classification meant Earth would have limited access to galactic trade routes and technology exchanges. "They don't understand what we've achieved," Sarah said, pulling up her latest research data. The complex equations describing her team's work on 7th-Dimensional space manipulation filled the air around them. "Their entire technological framework is based on brute force manipulation of higher dimensions. They never considered our approach possible." The meeting chamber doors slid open, revealing the alien delegation. The Arcturi ambassador, Zekthal, glided forward on what appeared to be a cushion of warped spacetime. Their crystalline exoskeleton caught the light, creating mesmerizing patterns that Sarah recognized as naturally occurring quantum interference patterns. 2 Meriday scientists followed, their 4-armed bodies covered in sophisticated measurement devices that constantly analyzed their surroundings. "Greetings, representatives of Earth," Zekthal's translator projected. "We have reviewed your technological capabilities extensively. While impressive for your development stage, they fall well short of Council standards for full membership." Sarah stepped forward, ignoring Admiral Rodriguez's cautionary glance. "Ambassador, with respect, I believe you've misinterpreted our approach to dimensional manipulation. Our research shows—" Dr. Chen, one of the Meriday scientists, interrupted, their tone carrying what could only be described as academic condescension. "We've analyzed your attempts at higher dimensional physics. Your civilization hasn't even achieved basic 5th-dimensional manipulation. The equations you're developing are interesting historical artifacts, but ultimately a dead end." Sarah loaded her team's latest simulation onto the holographic display. "We're not trying to brute force our way through dimensional barriers like your civilization did. We found a way to weave through them instead." The simulation showed their theoretical model, a vessel that didn't so much punch through dimensions as it slid between them, using what Sarah's team had dubbed dimensional resonance. The mathematics behind it had seemed impossible until they'd discovered that human consciousness itself created subtle ripples in higher dimensional space. The Meriday scientists chittered amongst themselves, their measurement devices whirring with increased activity. "Impossible," the first one declared. "The energy requirements alone would be minimal," Sarah completed, "because we're not fighting against dimensional boundaries. We're working with them." She brought up another simulation, this one showing the practical application of their theory. "Your civilization spent millennia developing technology to hammer through dimensional walls. We spent a decade learning how to pick the locks instead." Zekthal's crystalline form shifted, creating a discordant pattern that Sarah interpreted as discomfort or possibly disbelief. "You claim to have developed a method of dimensional travel that requires less energy than our established methods, based on consciousness interaction with higher dimensions." "We don't just claim it," Admiral Rodriguez interjected. "We've proven it in small-scale tests. The reason your sensors didn't detect our higher dimensional research is that we're not generating the massive energy signatures you associate with such work." The second Meriday scientist stepped forward, their measurement devices practically vibrating with excitement. If this is true, it would revolutionize our understanding of dimensional physics. But surely a Class 3 civilization couldn't have what? Sarah challenged. Couldn't have seen something you missed. Couldn't have approached the problem differently. Your civilization's technological advancement is impressive, Ambassador, but it has also locked you into a single way of thinking about dimensional physics. She gestured to the Earth visible through the command center's windows. Humanity has spent its entire history adapting, finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. We don't have the resources to brute force our way through obstacles, so we learn to work around them instead. The holographic display now showed the complete theoretical framework for what Sarah's team had dubbed the resonance drive. The aliens' measuring devices were working overtime, trying to process the implications of what they were seeing. Zekthel's crystalline form had shifted to a pattern Sarah hadn't seen before. Perhaps, the ambassador said slowly, we need to reassess our initial classification of your civilization. This approach to dimensional physics, it should not be possible. And yet here we are, Sarah completed. We're not asking for advanced technology or special treatment, Ambassador. All we're asking is that you judge us by what we can do, not by how we do it. The meeting chamber fell silent as the aliens conferred among themselves, their measuring devices continuing to analyze the resonance drive data. Sarah could see the moment their sophisticated instruments confirmed what she had been telling them. Humanity had found a way to revolutionize dimensional travel, not through overwhelming force or advanced technology, but through understanding and adaptation. The implications were clear. Humanity wouldn't be entering galactic society as a primitive species to be uplifted, but as innovators who had something unique to offer. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she watched the aliens struggle to reconcile their preconceptions with the reality before them. Sometimes the greatest achievements came not from power, but from seeing what everyone else had overlooked. The quantum leap. The prototype vessel hung suspended in the massive underground testing chamber, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly sheen that seemed to shift between dimensions. Dr. Sarah Chen watched from the control room as her team made final adjustments to the resonance drive's quantum matrices. 3 months had passed since the fateful meeting with the Galactic Council, and humanity had something to prove. Neural interface synchronization at 98%, reported Dr. Marcus Wong, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The consciousness amplification chamber is responding exactly as theorized. Sarah nodded, her attention fixed on the real-time data streams flowing across her display. The alien observers from the council stood at the back of the control room, their measurement devices humming constantly. She could sense their skepticism and their curiosity. What your species proposes, the Merida scientist Ixel commented, contradicts everything we know about dimensional physics. You cannot simply gentle your way through dimensional barriers using consciousness as a guide. And yet, Sarah replied without looking up from her work, that's exactly what we're about to do. She turned to the test pilot who sat in a specialized interface chair, neural connectors extending from the headrest to link with his brain. How are you feeling, Captain Rivera? Miguel Rivera opened his eyes, which now held a subtle shimmer, an effect of the neural interface connecting his consciousness to the ship's systems. It's incredible, Dr. Chen. I can feel the dimensional boundaries like they're textures under my fingers. The ship isn't just responding to my commands, it's responding to my intentions. The alien observers chittered among themselves, their measuring devices working overtime to analyze the unprecedented readings. The Arcturi ambassador Zekthel's crystalline form shifted in patterns that Sarah had learned to recognize as intense interest. Beginning primary power-up sequence, Marcus announced. Quantum matrices are aligning. Consciousness amplification field is stable. Dimensional resonance patterns are forming exactly as predicted. Sarah watched as the prototype vessel began to emit a soft, purple-tinged glow. Unlike the harsh, energy-intensive dimensional drives used by the Council races, the resonance drive created subtle ripples in spacetime that human consciousness could perceive and manipulate. It was the difference between smashing through a wall and finding the hidden door. Captain Rivera, begin the first phase of the test sequence, Sarah instructed, her voice steady despite the historic nature of the moment. Miguel's consciousness, amplified by the ship's systems, reached out to touch the fabric of space-time itself. The vessel responded, its specially engineered hull beginning to harmonize with the dimensional frequencies that humans had discovered they could naturally perceive. Dimensional boundary approach beginning, Miguel reported, his voice taking on an ethereal quality as his consciousness expanded through the ship's systems. I can see them. The layers of reality. They're like sheets of silk floating in a breeze. The alien observers' measuring devices suddenly began emitting urgent signals. Impossible, Ixel declared. The energy readings, they're barely registering. You cannot be manipulating dimensional boundaries with so little power. We're not manipulating them, Sarah explained, allowing herself a small smile. We're asking them to let us through. The human consciousness creates ripples in higher dimensions naturally, ripples that match certain fundamental frequencies of reality itself. We simply had to learn how to amplify and direct that effect. The prototype vessel began to shift, not with the violent dimensional punctures that characterized alien technology, but with a subtle shimmer that made it seem to exist in multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Captain Rivera's consciousness, guided by years of training and supported by the ship's systems, found the natural resonance points between dimensions. Phase 1 transition beginning, Miguel announced. The boundaries are responding. It's like they recognize us, like they want to let us through. Sarah's team watched in amazement as their years of theoretical work became reality. The ship didn't tear through dimensional barriers. It slipped between them, using the natural quantum resonance of human consciousness to find paths that the brute force approach of alien technology had never detected. Full dimensional shift achieved, Miguel reported triumphantly. We're existing simultaneously in dimensional layers 1 through 7. Power consumption is minimal. All systems are stable. The control room erupted in cheers, but Sarah's attention was on the alien observers. Their measuring devices were going haywire, trying to comprehend how a primitive species had achieved something their civilizations had spent millennia working toward. Ambassador, Sarah said, turning to Zekthal, what you're witnessing is humanity's approach to dimensional physics. We didn't try to conquer higher dimensions through force. We learned to dance with them instead. The ambassador's crystalline form shifted through patterns Sarah had never seen before. Dr. Chen, your species has achieved something we believed impossible. The Council's evaluation of humanity was significantly in error. The implications of this technology, Ixel added, their scientific detachment cracking with excitement, this could revolutionize dimensional travel across the galaxy. The energy savings alone would transform interstellar commerce, but the applications for exploration. Sarah nodded, watching as Captain Rivera guided the prototype through a series of dimensional shifts that would have required massive energy expenditure using alien technology. That's why we're proposing the Joint Research Initiative. Humanity has discovered the principles, but we could benefit from your civilization's experience in practical applications. The prototype completed its test sequence, settling back into normal spacetime with the same gentle shimmer with which it had departed. Miguel opened his eyes, the neural interface powering down. It was beautiful, he said simply, like becoming one with the universe itself. As the alien observers huddled together, their measuring devices still struggling to process what they'd witnessed, Sarah allowed herself to feel the full weight of what they'd accomplished. Humanity hadn't just proven itself capable of matching alien technology. They'd shown that sometimes the greatest advances come not from overwhelming force, but from understanding, adaptation, and seeing the universe in a fundamentally different way. The resonance drive would change everything, not just for humanity, but for all spacefaring civilizations. And it had started with a simple question. What if we stopped trying to force our way through the universe's barriers and learned to work with them instead? Breaking the paradigm. The Helios, Humanity's first full-scale resonance drive vessel cruised through the edges of the Sol system. Its sleek hull, designed to harmonize with dimensional frequencies, reflected the distant sunlight in subtle waves that seemed to bend reality itself. In the command center, Captain Miguel Rivera sat in the neural interface chair, his consciousness extended through the ship's systems like a delicate web of awareness. Multiple council vessels approaching. First Officer Diana Patel reported, her hands moving across the holographic tactical display. They're maintaining their previous formation. Sarah Chen stood at her station, monitoring the resonance drive's performance metrics. The Council had arranged this demonstration, bringing together representatives from 12 different spacefaring civilizations. Their massive ships, each powered by conventional dimensional drives, formed a ring around the designated test area. Their energy signatures are overwhelming our standard sensors, Diana noted. The amount of power they're expending just to maintain position. And that's exactly why our approach works, Sarah replied, making a minor adjustment to the consciousness amplification field. Miguel, how are you feeling? Connected, he answered, his voice carrying that distinctive resonance that came from being merged with the ship's systems. I can feel the dimensional boundaries like currents in an ocean. The alien ships, they're creating so much disturbance with their brute force approaches. The main view screen showed the nearest council vessel, an enormous Arcturus dreadnought that could have contained 100 ships the size of the Helios. Ambassador Zechthel's voice came through the communication system. We have established the challenge parameters, Captain Rivera. The course runs through 17-dimensional layers, with varying degrees of barrier density. Our fastest ships require 3 hours to navigate this sequence safely. Miguel smiled, his eyes shimmering with the neural interface's glow. Understood, Ambassador. Helios is ready to proceed. Sarah checked the final system readings. The resonance drive hummed quietly, consuming less power than the ship's life support systems. All systems nominal, Captain. Consciousness amplification field is stable. Beginning dimensional sequence, Miguel announced. Through his enhanced awareness, he could feel the layers of reality spread out before them like sheets of flowing silk. Where the alien ships punched through these layers with raw power, the Helios would slip between them, guided by the fundamental resonance between human consciousness and the fabric of space-time itself. The ship began to move, its hull shimming as it phased partially through different dimensional layers. The alien observers' measuring devices struggled to track their progress, designed as they were to monitor the massive energy signatures of conventional dimensional drives. First transition complete, Diana reported, checking the chronometer. 30 seconds elapsed. The nearest council vessel is still spooling up their dimensional drive. Through the neural interface, Miguel guided the Helios through the course with an artist's touch. The ship didn't fight against dimensional barriers. It flowed through their natural gaps, using the quantum resonance of human consciousness to find paths that brute force could never detect. This is impossible, one of the Meride scientists protested over the comm channel. You cannot be achieving stable dimensional transitions with so little energy expenditure. Our readings must be in error. Sarah watched as the Helios completed another transition, sliding through dimensional barriers that the aliens' technology needed massive energy pulses to breach. The readings are accurate, she replied. You're just seeing what happens when you work with universal principles instead of against them. The demonstration continued, and with each transition, the alien observers grew more agitated. Their ships, massive and powerful as they were, remained locked in their conventional approach to dimensional travel, gathering enormous amounts of energy to force their way through reality's barriers. Final sequence initiating, Miguel announced, his consciousness dancing through the dimensional frequencies. The Helios moved like a leaf on the wind, finding natural pathways through reality that the alien sensors couldn't even detect. Challenge course complete, Diana declared triumphantly. Total elapsed time, 17 minutes, 43 seconds. The communication channels erupted with chatter as the alien observers tried to process what they'd witnessed. The Helios had completed a course in minutes that their most advanced ships needed hours to navigate, and it had done so while using less energy than their ship's auxiliary systems. Ambassador Zekthel's crystalline form shifted through patterns of amazement and disbelief. Captain Rivera, Dr. Chen, what we have witnessed today will revolutionize space travel across the galaxy. The Council's preliminary assessment of human capabilities was deeply flawed. We appreciate the acknowledgement, Ambassador, Sarah replied. But this demonstration wasn't about proving superiority. It was about showing that there's more than one way to approach the universe's challenges. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most powerful, it's the most harmonious. As the alien vessels began powering down their massive drives, Sarah looked at the data streaming across her displays. The Helios had performed beyond even their most optimistic projections, proving that humanity's insight into the fundamental nature of reality could change everything. You know what the really interesting part is, Miguel said, his consciousness still merged with the ship's systems. I can feel other resonances out there, patterns in the dimensional fabric that we haven't even begun to explore. This isn't just about faster space travel. We're opening up whole new ways of understanding reality itself. The Helios hung in space, its hull still shimming with dimensional harmonics, a testament to humanity's unique approach to universal challenges. They hadn't needed to become the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. They had simply needed to see what everyone else had overlooked. That sometimes the key to advancing wasn't about having the biggest engines or the most energy, but about understanding the subtle harmonies that connected all things. Crisis at the edge. Emergency alarms blared through the Galactic Council's central command as holographic displays showed a massive dimensional anomaly forming at the edge of known space. The Helios crew, still present for ongoing technology exchange discussions, watched as alien officials scrambled to respond to the crisis. The dimensional tear is expanding exponentially, the Meriday chief scientist announced, their multiple arms working across different control interfaces simultaneously. The barrier between dimensions is becoming dangerously unstable. Sarah Chen studied the readings, her mind racing through calculations. The tear had formed where several major trade routes converge, and dozens of ships were trapped in its vicinity, their powerful dimensional drives now working against them as the fabric of reality unraveled. Our vessels can't get close enough. Ambassador Zekthel's crystalline form pulsed with urgent patterns. The energy from our dimensional drives is only accelerating the deterioration. We're looking at a cascade failure that could spread across half the sector. Miguel Rivera, still connected to the Helios through his neural interface, spoke up. The resonance patterns, they're all wrong. The tear isn't just breaking through dimensions, it's causing them to fold in on themselves. Sarah turned to the council representatives. Your ship's dimensional drives are too powerful. They're like trying to perform surgery with a sledgehammer. But the Helios might be able to help. We can feel the dimensional frequencies, work with them instead of against them. The alien officials conferred quickly, their measuring devices showing the rapidly deteriorating situation. Traditional emergency protocols weren't designed for this type of crisis. No one had ever considered that their powerful dimensional drive technology might become a liability. The Helios is cleared for emergency intervention, Ambassador Zekthal announced. All council vessels will withdraw to a safe distance. Captain Rivera, Dr. Chen, the lives of thousands depend on your success. Sarah rushed to her station aboard the Helios as Miguel prepared for the most challenging test yet of human dimensional technology. Through the neural interface, he could already sense the chaotic patterns emanating from the tear. The consciousness amplification field is stable, Sarah reported. But these readings, the dimensional barriers are becoming dangerously thin. One wrong move could tear them completely. I can feel it, Miguel replied, his enhanced consciousness extending through the ship's systems. It's like a wound in reality itself. But there's still a pattern there, underneath the chaos. The Helios moved forward as the massive council ships retreated, their powerful drives now a danger to everyone. Through the view screen, the dimensional tear was visible as a writhing distortion in space, colors that shouldn't exist bleeding through from other realities. Beginning dimensional frequency analysis, Sarah announced. Miguel, we need to find the natural resonance points before the whole structure collapses. The ship drew closer, its hull shimming as it partially phased through different dimensional layers. Where the alien vessels would have tried to force the tear closed through sheer power, the Helios sought to understand the patterns of the distortion itself. It's like a symphony that's fallen out of tune, Miguel said, his consciousness dancing through the dimensional frequencies. The barriers aren't just torn, they're confused. They've forgotten how to resonate with each other. Sarah watched as new data flowed across her displays. The tear is affecting 13 dimensional layers simultaneously. Conventional repair methods would need enough energy to power a small sun. We don't need that much power, Miguel replied. We just need to remind reality how to sing properly. Through the neural interface, Miguel guided the Helios in an intricate dance through the dimensional frequencies. The ship's resonance drive didn't fight against the chaos. It worked with it, using the natural quantum resonance of human consciousness to find the harmonies that had been lost. He's actually doing it, one of the alien observers whispered. The tear is beginning to stabilize. Sarah monitored the readings as Miguel worked. The Helios moved through the damaged dimensional layers like a conductor leading an orchestra back to harmony. Slowly, the chaotic energies began to calm, the different dimensions remembering their natural resonance patterns. The trapped ships are beginning to move away, Diana reported from Tactical. Hull integrity is holding steady despite the dimensional stress. Miguel's consciousness reached deeper into the dimensional frequencies, finding the core of the distortion. There's a knot here, where the dimensions first started to tangle. If I can just... The Helios shimmered, its hull temporarily existing in multiple dimensional layers at once. Through the neural interface, Miguel found the precise resonance pattern needed to untangle the dimensional knot. It wasn't about forcing the dimensions apart. It was about reminding them how they were meant to flow together. Dimensional stability is returning to normal parameters, Sarah announced. The tear is sealing itself naturally now that the frequencies are back in alignment. The crisis had been averted not through overwhelming force, but through understanding and working with the fundamental patterns of reality itself. As the Helios withdrew from the now stable region, the alien observers were silent, processing the implications of what they'd witnessed. Your species, Ambassador Zechthel said finally, has not only revolutionized dimensional travel. You have shown us an entirely new way of understanding reality itself. The Council's assessment of humanity must be completely revised. Sarah smiled as she checked the final readings. The Helios had used less energy to repair the dimensional tear than a Council ship would have needed just to approach it. Sometimes the greatest power comes from understanding rather than force, Ambassador. Humanity had to learn that lesson many times throughout our history. As the Council ships began returning to the area, their crews still amazed by what they'd witnessed, Miguel finally disengaged from the neural interface. You know what the most beautiful part was, he said softly. When we helped the dimensions remember how to dance together. For a moment, I could feel the music of the universe itself. A new understanding. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations had gathered for what would become a historic session. The Helios hung in orbit above the Council station, its hull still shimming with subtle dimensional harmonics from its recent mission. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled council, the holographic displays behind her showing data from both the dimensional tear crisis and the ongoing research into human dimensional resonance technology. Captain Miguel Rivera sat nearby, his neural interface deactivated, but his eyes still carrying a hint of the shimmer that came from regularly communing with higher dimensions. The events at the galactic edge have proven what we've been trying to demonstrate, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. The conventional approach to dimensional physics, while impressive in its achievements, has fundamental limitations that we can no longer afford to ignore. The chamber's displays shifted to show comparative analyses. The massive energy signatures of traditional dimensional drives contrasted sharply with the subtle resonance patterns of human technology. But it wasn't just about efficiency anymore. The crisis had shown that sometimes raw power wasn't just ineffective, but actively dangerous. Ambassador Zekthal's crystalline form shifted in patterns that the assembled delegates recognized as deep consideration. Dr. Chen speaks truth that we must all acknowledge. Our civilization's reliance on brute force dimensional manipulation nearly caused a catastrophe. Only humanity's unique approach prevented disaster. But it's more than just a different technological approach, Miguel added, standing to join Sarah. What we've discovered is a fundamentally new way of understanding reality itself. The universe isn't a barrier to be broken through. It's a dance partner waiting for the right invitation. The Meriday chief scientists stepped forward, their measuring devices still analyzing the Helios in orbit. Our preliminary studies of human dimensional resonance technology have revealed something extraordinary. The quantum patterns we've detected suggest that consciousness itself is far more deeply woven into the fabric of reality than we ever suspected. Sarah nodded, bringing up new data streams. What we've learned goes beyond just dimensional travel. The resonance patterns we've discovered have implications for energy production, terraforming, even healing dimensional damage caused by centuries of brute force drive usage. But to fully explore these possibilities, we need to change how we think about our relationship with the universe. The chamber erupted in discussion, hundreds of species debating the implications. Some were clearly uncomfortable with the idea of abandoning their powerful but crude approaches to dimensional physics. Others saw the potential for a revolutionary new era of space exploration and scientific understanding. The Council has reached a decision, Ambassador Zekthal announced, their crystalline form glowing with formal authority. Humanity is hereby reclassified as a Class 1 civilization with unique expertise in dimensional harmonics. Furthermore, we propose the establishment of a new Galactic Institute of Dimensional Harmonics to be jointly led by human researchers and Council scientists. A ripple of agreement passed through the chamber. Species that had once looked down on humanity as primitive now saw them as pioneers of a more elegant approach to universal forces. The implications went far beyond mere technological advancement. This was about fundamentally reshaping how civilizations interacted with reality itself. We accept the Council's proposal, Sarah replied, with one condition. The Institute must be open to researchers from all civilizations, regardless of their current technological classification. Sometimes, the most revolutionary insights come from those who aren't bound by conventional thinking. Miguel stepped forward, his experience with the neural interface giving him unique insight. What we've discovered isn't just human technology. It's a window into how the universe actually works. Every species, every consciousness, has the potential to perceive and work with these patterns. We've just been the first to recognize and amplify this natural ability. The Council chamber's displays showed the Helios in orbit, its hull shimming with dimensional harmonics that now seemed less like technological effects and more like glimpses of reality's true nature. The ship had become a symbol not just of human innovation, but of a new way of understanding humanity's place in the universe. Let this day be remembered, Ambassador Zekthal declared, not as the moment when one species proved its superiority, but as the beginning of a new era of galactic cooperation and understanding. Humanity has shown us that true advancement comes not from dominating universal forces, but from learning to dance with them. As the Council session concluded and new partnerships were formed, Sarah and Miguel stood at a viewport watching distant ships practicing the first clumsy steps of resonance technology. It would take time for other species to adapt to this new approach, to learn that sometimes the gentlest touch could achieve what the greatest force could not. You know what the best part is? Miguel said, watching a Meriday vessel attempt its first resonance-guided dimensional shift. Every species will develop their own way of perceiving and working with the dimensional harmonics. We're not just sharing technology. We're sharing a whole new way of experiencing reality." Sarah smiled, remembering how far they'd come from those first dismissed theories and rejected papers. That's the real breakthrough, isn't it? We didn't just change how ships move through space. We changed how an entire galaxy thinks about its place in the universe. The Helios continued its orbital dance above the Council Station, its hull shimming with the subtle harmonics of higher dimensions. In its quiet grace lay the promise of a future where advancement came not through force or power, but through understanding, cooperation, and the recognition that sometimes the most profound revolutions begin with simply learning to listen to the music of the universe itself.